Hi, everybody. Jamie Fleming here. Happy Friday, and welcome to session number 5 of Turning High Income into Prosperity. We're also combining today's session with our normal Fridays focus on finances, which is usually at 10:30 Pacific Standard Time. But it was apropos to combine the two today since we're talking about a topic that would apply to both, and that is looking at the pitfalls to avoid and the procrastination penalty. So I want to remind everybody that we are using StreamYard. So if you want to make a comment so I can see who you are, you have to give StreamYard permission. There's a link in the post today to be able to do that. I love getting your comments and I love seeing who's online live. If you're doing this as a replay, send us your comments as well because we still get those even if it's after the fact. So we have been spending, today's day 5, on really looking at how to turn your income into actual prosperity and what all that entails. So Monday and Tuesday, we looked at the psychology of money. We looked at what belief systems you may be holding from childhood that may also be holding you back, and looking at ways to turn those from negative impact to positive impact, and looking at creating the little habits that you do every single day to create good money psychology to get you to the place where you want to be financially, whatever level. So if you're starting out, then a good financial foundation is the place to be. So as your income grows, so does your saving, investing, and incorporating all the elements of your financial plan. Then on Wednesday, we looked at the process before prosperity. This is really getting the systems in place, including your filing system and what you know and don't know about your current finances. So you took hopefully a quick little financial fitness quiz, and regardless of where you are on that scale of the quiz, it's not a pass or fail, it's really an awareness exercise because we can't change what we don't know. And if we don't really understand what we're missing as far as knowledge, it's really hard to overcome that. And again, trying to really step up the financial literacy, the financial foundation, so that you can create good behaviors that you can implement every single day to have that end result. And remember, we talk about it is all the little things that you do every day that will have a long-term positive impact if it's good psychology. Just in the same way that most people that get into credit card debt isn't typically because of a one-time situation. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's a medical situation. That's why people end up having high credit card balances. But for the majority of people, what we see is it's a cash flow, it's a spending issue. And so what happens is that if you have your income and you're spending and you're not saving and investing, and maybe you're upside down by $100 or $200 a month, it doesn't sound like a big deal. But over time, if you're having to put that deficit on a credit card, then we're looking at, if it's $200 a month, that's $2,400 in a year, and over a 10-year period, that becomes $24,000. So it's usually the small, we talk about the frog in the boiling water, right? If you have a major medical expense right away and you have to put $10,000 on a credit card because you didn't have the money to pay the deductible, then that feels right away very stressful, right? But if it's the small piece of the puzzle that's happening over time, the slow warming up of the water until it boils, 10 years later, you realize I am in credit card debt and I don't know how to get out of it. So looking at where you're at right now, what you're really doing with your money is really critical. And so you do a spending plan, which is really just where is it going? It's not about, oh, I shouldn't be spending this much money here, or I shouldn't be. It's not budgeting. It's just looking at where is it going. If you don't know that, it's going to be really difficult for you to achieve most of your goals in a really efficient way until you can see what your reality is. And part of the reality is looking at your net worth. What is it? Is my net worth positive or negative, first of all? And the reason why we do net worth is it's a marker. Just as if we're trying to lose weight, we step on the scale, we see where we're at, and then A month later, we can step on the scale, we can see if we've improved or if we've gone backwards. Same thing with your finances. So you want to have markers so that you can more easily track. And initially, this is always something that gives people a little bit of angst, but it's easier to make decisions based on reality. So we did that on Wednesday. And then yesterday, we looked at the 11 steps that you can put in place to develop a plan with a purpose and give you that much more of a chance of succeeding and achieving your financial goals or any other goals, but we're obviously applying this to finances. So today we're going to look at the pitfalls to avoid and the cost of the procrastination penalty and what that might look like. And the reality is, I just want to make sure everyone's super clear. We've all made financial mistakes. No one is perfect. And if you look at the most successful people in the world, most of them will tell you they had major financial failures before they became successful. So it's not about making financial mistakes. You're going to do that throughout your lifetime. The questions, are they small or big, right? And the key is to not repeat them, right? Don't beat yourself up about them. And the ultimate goal is to learn from them, right? So we can change that cycle. So I call these mistakes financial tuition. Just think of it as going to school. Sadly, we're still not given a good financial foundation growing up through our school system. It should be part of the curriculum. It's better. I'm seeing my kids, I have 11-year-old twins, so starting in about the 4th grade and then going to 5th grade and now 6th, now I'm seeing more practical elements that are being given to them as far as their math and what that looks like in the real world. So it's getting a little bit better, but it really is still far behind of what we should have once we leave school, leave college, and hit the ground running. The financial foundation piece, if it was already there, then a lot of the catching up that people have to do throughout their lifetime wouldn't exist. But that's still not how we're taught in this world. And so it's up to us as individuals. And if we have kids, hopefully we're teaching our kids how to do this a little bit more. So the reality is if you find yourself making the same mistakes over and over again, for example, credit card debt, then you really need to be honest with yourself, your situation, and your capacity to fix ongoing financial mistakes that will frankly ruin your chances of a healthy financial future. This is why I say by the time people come to see me, sometimes they have behaviors that are so ingrained. Now, we can unwind those. That's why people come, because they've tried the same thing over and over again to try and fix their situation. They finally give up. They finally come see someone like myself or go through a coaching program like we're offering here. And then they say, why didn't I do this 5 years ago? Or why didn't I do it 10 years ago? So I encourage you, if you look back the last year, the last 2 years, the last 5 years, and you don't see the kind of progress that you would like, then you need to change your system or you need to get help. And we'll talk more and more about that. So some of the financial pitfalls we're going to talk about are obvious, like not having your spending plan written down, right? Not investing in your future or running up credit card debt. Right? If you've managed to avoid or even overcome these obvious pitfalls, then well done, right? But you may not be out of the woods yet. There's a whole list of pitfalls you should avoid, but may not even realize you're making them. So we're going to review some of these today. There's a whole lot more to look at, but these are some of the glaring ones that you want to make sure, or that you may not realize you're falling into that trap. So we want to look at it so you can make small changes from them. The first one, and we talked about this in principle number 3, is you don't pay yourself first. Okay. For savings investing, the most successful people and the most financially sound people have their savings and investing first after they earn their income or revenue from their business. Right? They look at what their goals are and they put that plan in place first, and then they live off whatever's left. The reality is that probably 75% of the population does it backwards, right? They earn their money, They take care of all their bills, which may include non-essential items. You know, we looked at yesterday that the average household pays $18,000 a year in non-essential items, yet they don't feel like they have enough to save and invest. So what if you paid yourself first? Your non-essential item budget would go down, but would you really miss some of these non-essentials that the average household is paying? That's almost $1,500 a month in non-essentials. You could do a lot with $1,500 a month, including hiring an advisor, hiring a coach, putting money away towards investments, and establishing those good money habits that we've been talking about for the last 5 days. The next pitfall is you don't have a debt plan, right? You don't have a debt plan. And that means if you have credit card debt, that's one problem, right? But the next problem is you don't have a plan to pay it off. And the plan can't be, I'm going to put as much money towards my credit card debt as humanly possible. Without a plan, here's what I see happens. I have clients that, not clients, but potential clients or people that come to see me, and they'll say, I've been putting extra money towards my debt for all this time, and I just don't see it going down. Well, one of the issues is that if you're putting all the money that you think you have extra, so first of all, they don't have a spending plan. So if you don't have a spending plan, how do you really know how much extra you have to put towards the credit card debt? So what typically happens is that there's this false sense that you're paying down your credit card debt because let's say you're taking an extra $500 a month, plopping it down towards your credit card debt, that sounds good. But when I look at your spending plan, you don't have an extra $500 at the end of the month to do that. So then you're having to put purchases back on the credit card. So it feels good that you're putting more on, but you're also charging more. So it's this perpetual hamster financial wheel that people get themselves stuck on because they don't have a debt plan. So what we do with clients that have credit card balances that are perpetual is we put a debt plan in place. So you can see part of the developing a plan with a purpose, there's a start and a finish. Right? Sometimes people think I'll put as much as I can on to get rid of it as quickly as I can. And 2 years later, 3 years later, 5 years later, they still have credit card balance and sometimes even more because there isn't a plan in place, right? And so when we have a plan in place and we just know, okay, maybe it's going to take 3 years to pay it off, but that's okay because we know it. And in addition to that, when people are putting as much as they can on their credit card debt and they have no emergency reserves fund, when an emergency happens, guess what happens? Yes, they have to go back on the credit card debt. So it's not the credit card debt itself is a pitfall, right? But let's just say you have it, now we have to deal with it. And if you don't have an actual debt plan, that is going to be very difficult. Not impossible, because I see people do it, but for the most part of the problem is how you got into credit card debt. And if you don't have a plan to get out of it, then it's just perpetuating itself. And it's a vicious cycle. So that's one of the things that we do is make sure we can get you out of debt and know when that happens. And then we have a plan for those monthly payments. So we really have to look at a plan, all right? A plan within the plan. And so you can see there's a lot of moving parts. So when people aren't getting the results that they want, it's because sometimes they're looking at their finances in a very compartmentalized way. That's why going through something like the year-long coaching program that we talked about yesterday is that we're helping people establish those new money habits that we talked about. And yes, 66 days it takes to establish these new money habits, but you're not doing it all on day one. So you may have to have a new habit to pay the debt off. You may have to have a new habit to save enough money for retirement. And then you have to have a new habit. So all these things. So over the course of the year, we're taking the entire situation and we're breaking that down for you so that we can help you establish those everyday habits. And then over the course of that year, You've really touched on all the areas of your finances that you are struggling with or need to make better or need to make more efficient. And by the end of the year, you've created new habits to move forward. So you're establishing that new system and ingraining it and making it automatic. So if you don't feel like you have those things in place, that's probably part of the problem because you're taking money from other areas, so it's a cycle. The third pitfall is ignoring your credit score. Okay, and this is a big deal because credit scores can be anywhere from 300 to 850. Okay, and the reason why this is important, especially when I'm working with people that want to buy a home or are going to finance a vehicle, but we talk about a home because that's usually a 30-year or a 15-year loan. And so the higher the interest you pay because your credit score is low, the more you're going to be paying for that house over time. And it could literally double what you paid for over that period of time. So let me give you an example. I just helped a client connect and refi their current mortgage, which was already pretty low at 3.99. She has a fairly low mortgage of $350,000, and her payment was $1,791, so pretty good, but we had her go through the process, and because her credit score is 800, that she was able to get a refinance rate of 2.875, down from 399. So that's over a percentage. And sometimes people think, well, what difference does a percentage really make? Well, here's what it makes. Her current payment is $1,791 a month, and it will go down to $1,512 a month. That's $279 a month. And over the course of the year is $3,348. If she just stashed it away, didn't invest it over 10 years, that's $33,000, $33,000, almost $500 more because of a 1% interest difference. Now the reverse is also true, right? If we let's look at a $400,000 mortgage, which isn't uncommon here in California. If your credit score is between 660 and 679, then your rate right now would be about 4.588 on average. Okay, 4.588, which doesn't sound horrible, right? Mortgage rates are historically low right now. When I was giving this presentation 5 years ago or 6 years ago, the interest rates were 2 or 3% higher. So this is sign of the times. So it is a good time to look at buying potentially if it fits in your cash flow. And because mortgage rates are so low, it makes it more affordable, especially if you're renting and you want to look at the difference. So with a credit score of 660 to 679, that gave about a 4.588% on average. That's a $2,050 a month mortgage payment. Okay. If that same person's credit score was between 780 and 799, they would have a mortgage rate of 2.899% with a monthly mortgage and interest payment of $1,665 a month. That's the difference of $383 a month, or $4,500, almost $4,600 a year. Over 10 years, that's $46,000. If you just put it away, if you didn't invest it, that's just socking it away. That's almost $50,000. If you invested it over that same period of time, that 10-year period, on average of 7%, you would double that and have almost $100,000. That's where working with someone to see your current situation. Do you see too a lot of what we've been talking about? We've been talking about implementing habits, right? We've been talking about all the little things that you can do that make a big difference. It's not just about the money that you're putting away or investing at a high level. It's about all the areas where there may be waste and not a lot of financial efficiency. And that's where you're going to make large changes and big moves in your financial well-being. So don't ignore your credit score. And number 4, this pitfall we talk about constantly is that if you're seeing some of these things happening and understanding how it's negatively affecting you and you're not asking for help, then you're delaying getting these financial pieces of the puzzle in place, right? And delaying it can be missing out on $100,000 over 10 years because you didn't get your credit score up before you financed a home. Maybe you could still buy it. Maybe you could still afford, quote unquote, afford the $2,050 a month mortgage, but it didn't allow you to save as much as you needed to for other things, including retirement. So if you're not asking for help, you can see how all these little things add up, and investing in yourself and investing in a coach can get you there so much faster. Because remember, we talked about the fact that people that have a coach are 80% more likely to succeed. So if you find yourself on the financial hamster wheel again, you have to look at making the decision to change. You have to make the decision to do what 90% of the people aren't doing. Because remember, when we looked at what incomes are at age 65 and older, only 8% are over 100,000 a year. So you have to be willing to do what 92% of the population isn't willing to do, right? And so, when we talk about asking for help, I know and I understand that money can be a taboo subject, but if you're not, if you're struggling, on a consistent basis, then you need to ask for help. Okay, there are a lot of resources available, and ignoring the problem in this area will only prolong and likely increase your financial crisis and in turn your financial stress. So initially, if you're feeling stress, and I always tell people where you're feeling the most stress, where you're feeling the most discomfort, that's where you want to pay attention. That's where you want to pay attention and look at making some changes, okay? Number 5, the next pitfall is always choosing money first, right? We always want to make sure you're doing right for yourself first and then your money. And this example is, I think, really brings this home. And an example of always putting money first is taking a job simply because it pays more. But in addition to that, it may also be increasing your work week from 40 hours to 60 work week, or maybe it increases your commute, your round trip commute by 2 hours. So if you go back to your values pyramid, and you have a family or significant other, and you take this job simply because it pays more, but it takes you away from your family, it takes you away from spending time at your home, takes you away from all these things, then that might not have been the right money choice for you. So you want to look at what is right for you first, and then what's right for your money. And that could be investing as well. If you can't sleep at night, if you're invested in some way, and it gives you an incredible amount of stress, probably not the right investment for you. It's probably out of whack with your risk tolerance. So you need to look at that, even if it says, this investment will give you 15% a year. But if it's a roller coaster and that's keeping you up at night and causing you anxiety, then it's not the right investment for you. You don't want to create stress because you invested at something just because someone said it was a good idea. It has to feel right and it has to make sense to you. Okay. Number 6, kind of in alignment with the other one, is that you also don't change jobs. Many people tell me how stuck they feel because they're not moving ahead in their current position. So you want to see what's out there, see what the competition is. And if nothing else, seeing what's out there may give you a way to leverage what you're already doing at your current position. Maybe there are positions out there that are paying more, but you like the job that you're at now, you don't want to change. It may give you some leverage if you know you could go somewhere else. Again, change is hard, right? Even if it's going to benefit you. So take those pieces of the puzzle and bring it back to your employer and add value and show why you deserve a raise. And if they don't give you a raise and it feels terrible, then that's what you need to pay attention to. And you might have to end up making a change for the better to make yourself feel more valuable. I have a perfect example in my history, in my industry, of where I left a salary job which there are salary jobs in this industry, not many, but I took a salary job because I wanted to learn about a specific area of institutional investing. And I had about 5 years of experience in the industry, and this was over 20 years ago. So first and foremost, it's a very male-dominated industry even today, but 20 years ago, it was even more glaring in that sense. There were not a lot of women in the companies that I was working for. And so I went in, I was in my mid to late 20s, and I got the job and I was given a salary that was less than my male counterparts. And the reasoning was because they had 15 and 20 years of experience and I only had 5. So I thought, okay, that makes sense. I mean, I did take actually a little bit of a cut in pay because I was making more when I was on my own prior to that. But again, I wanted specifically this training, and I wanted this experience in institutional investing. So it made sense for me to do that. And then over that course of the year, not only did I prove myself, but I also outperformed my other 2 male counterparts by at least 2 times. And so what happened is that I thought, okay, initially I understand. It made sense that I wasn't getting paid as much as they were because they had experience. Hi, Amanda. Thanks for coming. And so after I proved myself, I thought, okay, this is a no-brainer because when I have my annual review, it's going to be painfully obvious that I brought value to the organization. And when I asked to make as much as they were, I didn't even ask to make more. When I asked to make as much as they were, which would have been a $10,000 or $15,000 increase in my pay, I was told no, and that they were only going to offer me a $5,000 increase. And so here's where you have to look at what's important to you. Right? You have to look at what's important to you. And I knew all that I had done that year, I would have gotten paid at least twice what I was getting paid in salary there. But there's some benefits, right? To having a job, to having salary, to having, vacation time, to having all those things. But then when I left that office after my review, I did not feel great, one, about the company. 2, if I had stayed, I would have felt horrible about myself because I knew I was being undervalued. So I had to make the decision to move on. And it was not an easy decision, right? It wasn't an easy decision. So I don't want anyone to have this sense that it's easy. It's change. And we've talked about this the entire week. Change is difficult, even if you know it's in your best interest. But I left that, and it was the first time I decided that I want to establish my own firm. And I want to do things the way I think they can be done in the industry versus how I've been trained all these years. So again, that's one example. And again, it was scary. It was I was in my 20s. I wanted to make sure I was taking care of myself financially, but you have to evaluate. And I was doing the values pyramid way back then. It wasn't called a values pyramid when I was doing it, but I knew what was important to me and I knew what I wanted to achieve. So you have to make sure that you continue to go back to that. And if you're feeling stuck, it's really hard to progress anyway. All right, so number 7, you're doing something because, right? Make sure your decision and your choices are for you, not because it's what you think you should do. Okay, make sure they're right for you. An example would be having kids or buying a home. I have been in situations and in relationships where I clearly wanted to have a family. I have 11-year-old twins, and I was with someone who did not. And so that relationship did not make sense. And those are hard choices, right? And initially they thought they would stay in the relationship and have a family, but that is not how that person wanted to live. So doing something just because you think you should could create massive problems in other areas of your world. So make sure whatever your goals are, that you're doing them for yourself, not because that's what you think you should be doing, and make sure they are in alignment with your values. So number 8, the American dream, buying a house, right? But buying too much of a house might be the pitfall. The average square footage of houses has increased steadily. I'm going to give you some stats here from 1973 to today. The average went from 1,660 square foot to 2,679 square foot on average. And at the same time, the number of occupants has decreased from just on average over 3 down to on average 2.5. If you look at, obviously you can't have 2.5 people, but you know what I'm saying. So it went from having 3 people in a 1,669 square foot on average house to less than that at a house that's 1,000 square foot more. So the reason why we talk about this is because this is one of those things that people think they should do when they're more successful, when they are earning higher income. And I've used the example of my potential doctor client. And one of the things that he said, because he was approaching 50 when he should be considering winding down from his profession because it's very, very stressful. All of his colleagues were winding down, but he has a very expensive lifestyle to maintain. And he said to me, he said, I think I was happier when my wife and my kids and I lived in a small apartment and we had money to do the things that really made us happy. And so he was getting very burnt out and he had a very high mortgage to pay and it was not giving him joy. So bigger doesn't always mean better. And in reality too, bigger means you got to fill it with more stuff, right? So here we go with that stuff piece of it again. So I have a lot of people that come in and they're house rich and they're cash poor. And so what happens is they thought they needed the big house in the expensive neighborhood, and then now they're not doing any of the things that give them joy. So you just want to make sure it's in alignment, not because it's what you thought you were supposed to do. Number 9, if you have kids, is that you don't teach your kids about money. And maybe part of the problem is that you didn't have the tools yourself to teach them. So remember, the belief systems we acquire are usually by age 8. Right? So if you don't have the tools for yourself, then you need to start implementing that either through practice or through a coaching program. This masterclass gives you a really good solid foundation, and then start teaching your kids as you move forward. Because remember, we talked about your kids are learning either unintentionally, meaning by observation, which is the way most of us learned, or intentionally by you taking new tools and new practices and implementing it for your kids. If you do that for your kids, if you help them establish good money habits, you're going to set them up for a lifetime. They will have no issues around money, or if they do have bumps in the road, they'll have the tools to really overcome any of those obstacles. But that starts with you. So you have to make that decision. Are you going to make the changes, the little changes that you see every day to get you to your financial well-being? And number 10, the last pitfall that we're going to talk about, it's not the last pitfall that you could, run into, but the last one we're going to talk about is you don't reevaluate. So when you experience new changes in your financial world, you need to reevaluate your plan to make sure you're still in financial alignment. Many times people will come in, new clients, they'll say, yes, I do have a financial plan, but it hasn't been updated in 5 years. And so we look at it and most of them are obsolete. So they're not updating their spending plan. They probably have more income than they had 5 years ago, or they have new items like a house or a car that they didn't have 5 years ago. So when your situation changes, you want to look at your spending plan at least once a year, because things do change for better or for worse, and you want to know which way the scale you're tipping. You want to reevaluate your investments. Make sure the investments that you have are still in alignment with the goals that they're attached to. So you want to make sure if your goals have changed, you may have to reallocate your investments. Reevaluating your retirement and your allocations for retirement. When you're heading into or you're heading towards retirement, you're in the accumulation phase, and most people are in growth types of investments. As you get closer to retirement, though, you want to start safeguarding some of the monies. Growth investments are by nature more volatile. And as you get closer to retirement, instead of pure growth, you need to have it reevaluated and reallocated so it starts to generate income with some growth, right? Because you have to keep up with inflation and cost of living. So you need to reevaluate your retirement as well, especially in years where we've had extreme growth in stocks and such. You want to make sure you're not over diversified in that area. You don't want to be too heavily allocated in that area. So you need to do some shifting of the investments. And then you want to look at and reevaluate any new goals that require money to accomplish them. Right? When you get a new goal, you can go back to the 11 steps of designing a plan with a purpose so that you have a better chance of achieving those goals. So those are the 10 pitfalls that we're looking at today. Again, there's more, but those are some of the more common ones that come up. And then a pitfall that we didn't speak to there that is actually so huge in my mind is one that I have created an entire principle towards, and that is the procrastination penalty, right? The procrastination penalty will not serve your financial well-being, okay? The analysis to paralysis. If you've gone through these 5 days and so much in the day makes sense, and then at some point you hit overwhelm, if you're doing this on your own and overwhelm creates procrastination, then you need to look at that and make sure you're either overcoming it, you're getting help, you have someone keeping you accountable. I had so many direct messages from Facebook when we were reminding people that aren't here live that the replay is available, that they can go listen to the replay, and they were thanking us for reminding them because their day got busy. Their work day got busy. They were traveling, or they forgot that they had the replay option. So we make the replay options available to you, and we only make them available to you till next week. So next week at Tuesday, you want to make sure that if you haven't been on live, or if you need to go back and listen to something again, get those replays in before Tuesday, because we're going to take them down. And we do this intentionally. Why? Because if they're there perpetually, this procrastination penalty, it sets you up for failure. So we want to make sure that you get this information within a limited amount of time so you can start taking action. Okay, and that's the whole point of establishing this masterclass, is because we want to make sure, one, that people understand high income does not translate necessarily to prosperity, that there's steps in between income and actually being financially fit. Okay, and to do that, it requires action steps. So as a part of the experiential learning, I want to make sure you're taking action, and that means you gotta hop on and listen to the replays, or everybody was emailed that signed up, that actually registered. You should be receiving emails with the replay links. So again, take advantage of those, because they're not going to be there forever, right? They're not going to be there forever, because I want you to get the information and then move on to the next step. Okay, so let's look at some of the ways that the procrastination penalty can really be detrimental to your financial well-being. And the first one, of course, is paying credit cards late, right? Don't you hate that when that happens and you get that $45 extra bill, and then every time you pay it late, it goes up and up and up? But addition to that, sometimes when people do the 0% interest, which if we're paying off credit card debts, we're looking at how can we manage this so that you're not paying more in interest. So those are good offers. But if you have a habit of paying credit cards late, most people don't realize that if you pay it late on a 0% interest, that your interest rate reverts to the cash advanced interest rate, which is usually like 29.9%. So I had people come in, they're going through their finances with me, they're telling me about their 0% interest rate, so we're saying great. I have them bring their statements and upload everything, and they don't even realize that because they made a late payment, that their 0% interest may have reverted to a much higher interest rate. And now this is one of the reasons why they're not getting out of credit card debt. And it's just the awareness. They have so much going on, they didn't even realize it. Okay. Some other simple things that create more expense than they should is maybe even buying gifts at the last minute. Sometimes when you are doing things at the last minute, you're spending more money than you normally would if you plan for them. So if you plan ahead of time, you can be more thoughtful and maybe not spend as much, okay? This isn't happening right now, but this is a huge one, is that you don't plan ahead when booking travel. Okay, obviously with COVID, there's still traveling going on, but in general, when travel life reverts back to normal, the more you can plan for these things, the better off you are. And the other thing that happens when people wait to the last minute to plan for travel, not only getting a better deal, but if you wait to the last minute and you have to pay it on credit card, even if you got a good deal and you don't pay it off every month, you could end up spending more for the same travel plans than if you planned for them in advance. And that's one of the things we do with our coaching when we go through the spending plan. We look at how much you've spent in travel over the last few years so we can set up a deferred spending category for this very thing. So there are ways to do it. It's not about eliminating what you do. It's about financial efficiency and how can we do it and still get you to all of your other financial goals. Another way the procrastination can be a huge penalty to you is you delay opening a retirement account just at face value. And then on top of that, if you have a 401k with an employer match and you're not contributing, you are definitely leaving money on the table. If you're making $50,000 a year and your employer is matching 3%, you're leaving $1,500 on the table every single year. Over a 10-year period, that's like $20,000, $23,000. Over a 20-year period, that's almost $75,000 that you're leaving on the table by not contributing to a 401k plan with an employer match. And by the way, if they're matching 3%, that means you're putting in 3%. So those numbers that I just gave you, double those because you would be putting in the same amount. So it's very costly. It would be almost $50,000 over 10 years and $150,000 over 20 years just because you didn't start contributing to your 401k plan. Putting off home improvement projects, these can literally cost you thousands of dollars that they seem so benign, but like if you have running water and leaks, swapping out light bulbs for energy efficient, not changing your air conditioning filters, over time, these cost you so much money. And again, we talk about this ad nauseum, that it is all the little things you do every day that make the big difference over time. And that's either a difference to the positive or the difference in the negative if you're not doing the good behaviors. If you're doing the bad behaviors over time, you may not see it in the daily kind of process of what you're doing, but 10 years, 20 years, 30 years later, you will have not had the financial success that you could have if you started paying attention to those things. This is one of my favorites to talk about because when I work with people through my coaching program, it's happened when we did this live launch in July and I'm working with those students. The students that came and they would show me their goals, and they would literally be so hard to read because they're just scribbling it out, right? We talk about clutter combined with procrastination. If your goals aren't clear, and that even means literally being able to read them, then how are you going to make sure that you have a clear path to them? So we talk about clutter combined with procrastination. It could really dent the budget, right? Because you're not paying attention. And this goes true for other things. We're talking about finances all the time, and all these little things affect it, right? So if your cabinets, your closets, your garage, your basement, your office, if other areas of your home are cluttered, you probably don't actually know all the things that you have, and you may be duplicating. You may be buying food that you don't need, or food might be going to waste because you're not paying attention to it. Again, these seem like small things, but if that's your perpetual behavior, it has a detrimental long-term effect, right? So if you procrastinate in these areas, then you're not seeing where all the leakage, all the financial leakage is happening. So you want to start organizing. That's why we do principle number 2, and that's why we feng shui your finances. We get your filing system in place. We talk about automation and systemation so that way you know what's happening and you can make really structured change to create those consistent habits. When you're cluttered, you're usually not consistent either. If you're not doing something consistently, then you're not going to have the same positive impact that if you were. And then budgeting issues. And I'm not talking about budgeting as far as what you should be spending on something, but we're talking about not having a spending plan once again, right? If you do not have a spending plan, how do you know where all the monies are going? You may just think you just don't have any at the end of the day. And if you don't have it written down and you don't figure it out, it's gonna be really hard to make positive change there, okay? The other issue is not comparing household costs like insurances, cable internet, phone packages. It's ironic that Amanda's on the call today because she is in that industry. And so these are things that you should be looking at on a regular basis when it comes to auto, home, umbrella, commercial. You want to make sure that you're not spending more than what you should be and making sure that you have the right coverages. And please make sure that you know what your deductibles are, because if you have deductibles and you don't have an emergency reserves to cover them, you are heading for a potential financial disaster. So these things are quite important. And if you have your filing system in place, then it's pretty easy to pick it up or go onto your electronic folder and pull up all these items so that they can be reviewed on a regular basis. When we look at our financial planning clients' situation every year we give them a list, them update all the things, and they may say, well, we we don't think anything's changed. But if I don't see it, how do I know? And inevitably something in there has changed. And it could be, well, you have more stuff now. You have stuff to lose. And if you don't have an umbrella plan or an umbrella policy and someone gets hurt, now you have more to lose. This is that risk management that we talk about it all the time. It's not just about the investing. It's not just about making sure you have enough money at the end of the day. It's protecting all the things you've worked so hard for. So that's what I'm talking about. And you want to make sure that you're not paying too much, because when you are, that takes away from your savings and investing as well. So, take some time. You can save and bundle stuff and stop leaving money on the table. And that may just be a phone call. That may just be calling someone and say, hey, I have all this stuff. Can you look at it and make sure I actually know what I have? And that's part of the issue. People don't know what they have coverage-wise, and then they have a situation, and then they figure out that they didn't have the right coverage. So when we're asking people for their policies every single year, if we're not putting them in place, if it's from an outside source, then we can look and see pretty clearly, because you're not looking at it every day. So someone needs to look at it at least once a year to make sure, based on what you've accumulated over the last year, over the last 5 years, that it is protected. You do not want to find these things out the hard way. So that is the last piece of the procrastination penalty that we're talking about today, with the exception of asking for help. Okay, ask for help. If you've gone through this masterclass, and I've had people say to me, this was a lot. It is, but this is your financial reality. You're either looking at it with intention to make sure that you get to your goals, or you're ignoring it. And we talked about ignorance is expensive, right? At some point, if it's a priority to you, at some point, you may want to look at what's the best way for me to get from where I am today, because it's where I was a year ago, where I was 2 years ago, and where I want to go. Where do I invest in myself to get this education? We've given you 5 days, 5 hours this week of education that should be the foundation of what you're doing going forward. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, or if your head's spinning a little bit, because although it makes sense, you realize there is a lot. And why do you think so many people aren't in the better financial place that they should be? It's because they don't have enough time to deal with it all. They don't have enough time to deal with it all. So look at our program. Look at our program. Let us know if any of it is confusing or doesn't make sense, or if you have questions. And worst case scenario, ask us to schedule a consult with you. What do you have to lose, right? What do you have to lose to talk with someone to say, hey, I'm in this situation. I want to be in a better situation. What are my options? And so again, you have the replays available to you until Tuesday of next week. So get those in. Make sure if you're procrastinating listening to them, that you get those done before Tuesday. Look at our offer, look at our coaching program where you can have an entire year of someone looking at all the 5 Ps to financial prosperity and looking how the small shifts over that period of time could dramatically improve your financial situation. And that year is going to help you establish all the good money behaviors that you need to carry on and carry through to your financial well-being. So let me know either by direct message, email, phone. Let us know on Facebook. Monique Torres, my director of operations, has been tagging people to let you know that we're speaking. She can help set you up on a schedule for a consult as well so that we can answer any lingering questions, right? If you've gone through this and you think, yes, I need to do some of these things, but yet you still don't know where to go from here, let us help. Let us help you get to the next step. Whether you're ready to work with us or not, you can figure that out through the consult. With that said, too, I actually want to acknowledge the people who have taken the step because you realize that this is something that you need to do. And based on the examples of just some of the little things we've helped clients achieve, then the investment that you're making in yourself right now, over the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 25 years, the results are going to be dramatic and in a good, positive way. So I hope that now you have, after the 5 days, some additional tools to put in place in your own situation. And if you're looking at really exponentially making a change, then look at working with us as this year-long coaching program to really dive into what we've talked about these last 5 days, including putting a financial plan in place, including having an advisor that you can ask all your financial questions and collaborate on making the best financial decisions for you in your situation. That's what you have available to you. Most people don't understand exactly what a financial planner does. They really think it's just the investing and savings. But hopefully through this 5 days, you can see. And then most people think, wow, now I actually understand why I'm not where I want to be financially, because there were all these other pieces that I wasn't considering. So take some time, look at the replays, ask me questions, set up a consult, or if you're ready to dive in, look at working with us over the next year through this program so we can get you in a better place and look back a year from now and see all the progress that you've made. So I hope this was helpful. If you're here as new members, part of the masterclass, also know that we do Fridays Focus on Finances every Friday, usually at 10:30 a.m. Today was different because we're doing the masterclass. And also know I'm going to be doing a bonus session tomorrow at the same time at 11 o'clock to answer some questions that people have posed to us over the last 5 days, as well as some of their financial beliefs that they brought to the forefront and want help transitioning those from the current beliefs where they're getting stuck to rewriting them in the positive. So if you want to be part of that process, we'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. With our bonus question and answer session. I hope to see you all there. And if not, don't forget the replays until Tuesday. Have an amazing weekend, and don't forget to do something positive for yourself and make one good financial decision this weekend to incorporate going forward. So thanks everybody for being here, and we'll see you tomorrow.